Commander Han Daiho stood on the observation deck of the Unity space station, staring at the massive ships that had appeared 3 days ago. The alien vessels hung in space like sleeping giants, their silver hulls catching the light from Earth's sun. Each ship was 10 times larger than anything humans had ever built. "Still can't believe they're real," said Captain Lee beside him. The younger officer pressed his face against the reinforced glass, his breath fogging the surface. Han kept his arms crossed. Something felt wrong about all of this, but he couldn't put his finger on what exactly bothered him. The ships had simply appeared without warning. No energy signatures, no distortions in space. One moment the scanners showed empty space, the next moment 12 massive ships sat in perfect formation above Earth. Down on the planet's surface, people celebrated in the streets. The news called it the greatest day in human history. First contact with an alien civilization, but Han had spent 30 years in the military, and he knew that surprises usually meant trouble. The communication console beeped. "Commander, we're receiving another transmission from the alien flagship," reported Officer Park from the comm station. Han walked over and activated the main screen. The face that appeared was almost human, but not quite. The alien had pale blue skin, large golden eyes, and features that seemed too perfect, too symmetrical. When it spoke, its voice was calm and musical. "Greetings, people of Earth. I am Ambassador Thalvin of the Valeth Collective. We come in peace, seeking friendship and understanding between our species." The same message they had been broadcasting for 3 days. Han had memorized every word by now. The alien claimed its people had been exploring the galaxy for thousands of years, spreading knowledge and helping younger civilizations develop. They wanted to establish what they called cultural exchange centers on Earth. "Sir, we have Dr. Park So-min on the line from the research facility," Officer Park announced. Han switched the channel. Dr. Park So-min appeared on screen, her face excited, but tired. She had been working around the clock since the aliens arrived, studying every piece of data they had shared. "Commander, you need to see what we've discovered," she said. "The medical technology they've offered us is incredible. They claim they can cure cancer, repair spinal injuries, even extend human life by decades." "That's wonderful news, Doctor," Han replied, though his voice lacked enthusiasm. Dr. Park noticed his tone. "You don't sound happy about this." "I'm cautious," Han said. "In my experience, when something seems too good to be true, it usually is. But Commander, think about what this means. Millions of people could be saved. Children who would die from diseases could live normal lives. How can we not be excited about this?" Han understood her excitement, but his military training made him ask different questions. Why had the Valeth come here? What did they want in return? And why were they being so generous with technology that must have taken them centuries to develop? On Earth's surface, Ambassador Kim Tae-wan was preparing for another meeting with the Valeth delegation. Kim had been chosen to represent humanity in these historic talks. He was a skilled diplomat who had helped resolve conflicts between Earth's remaining nations. Kim reviewed his notes one more time. The aliens wanted to build their cultural centers in 12 major cities around the world. They claimed these centers would help humans learn about Valeth science and culture, while the Valeth learned about humanity. The locations they had chosen seemed random at first. New York, London, Tokyo, Mumbai, Sao Paulo, Cairo, Sydney, Lagos, Moscow, Mexico City, Jakarta, and Seoul. But when Kim looked at a map, he realized these cities represented the major population centers of Earth. Nearly half of humanity lived within a few hundred kilometers of these locations. A soft chime indicated the Valeth shuttle had arrived. Kim straightened his tie and walked to the landing platform. The shuttle was beautiful, a smooth oval of silver metal that made no sound as it descended. When it landed, a door appeared in its side without any visible seams. Ambassador Thalvin stepped out, followed by 2 other Valeth. They moved with perfect grace, as if they were dancing rather than walking. Thalvin smiled when he saw Kim, showing teeth that were slightly too white and perfectly straight. "Ambassador Kim, it is always a pleasure to meet with you." Thalvin said in perfect English. "The pleasure is mine, Ambassador," Kim replied. "Have you had a chance to review our proposed locations for your cultural centers?" "Yes, and we are most pleased with your selections. The Valeth Collective believes these locations will serve as excellent bridges between our civilizations." They walked together toward the conference room. Kim had attended dozens of these meetings over the past 3 days, and each one followed the same pattern. The Valeth were polite, helpful, and eager to share their technology. They answered most questions readily, but Kim noticed they sometimes avoided certain topics. "Ambassador Thalvin, may I ask about your homeworld?" Kim said as they sat down. "Of course. Valeth Prime is a beautiful world, much like Earth but with purple oceans and 3 moons. Our people have lived there in peace for over 10,000 years. And you've been exploring space all that time?" "We have been blessed with the ability to travel between stars for many centuries. We have met many species in our journeys, and we have helped many of them achieve greater prosperity and happiness." Kim made notes, but something about the way Thalvin spoke bothered him. The alien's answers were always smooth and perfect, like he had rehearsed them many times before. Meanwhile, back on the space station, Han received a priority message from Earth's military command. General O had called an emergency meeting of VIO, the Defense Council. "Commander Han," General O's voice came through the secure channel. "I want you to quietly begin monitoring the alien ships. Use passive scans only. Don't let them know we're watching." "Yes, sir. May I ask why?" "Something doesn't add up about these Valeth. I've been in contact with our allies around the world, and we all have the same feeling. These aliens are too perfect, too helpful. In nature, nothing gives without expecting something in return." Han felt relieved that his superiors shared his concerns. "What do you want me to look for, sir?" "Anything unusual, energy patterns, communications we can't decode, movement patterns. I want to know everything these ships are doing, even when they think no one is watching." Over the next several hours, Han's team began their careful observation. They used long-range sensors positioned to look like routine space monitoring equipment. What they found was subtle but disturbing. The Valeth ships were scanning Earth constantly, not just the obvious scans they had permission to perform, but deep, detailed examinations of human cities, military installations, and communication networks. The scans were so advanced that Earth scientists barely understood how they worked. Dr. Park So-min made her own discovery that day. While studying the medical technology the Valeth had shared, she found something strange. The devices seemed to do more than just cure diseases. They also collected detailed information about human biology and brain chemistry. She tried to contact the Valeth research team with questions about this feature, but they gave her vague answers about monitoring patient health and ensuring treatment effectiveness. As the day ended, Han stood once again at the observation window watching the alien ships. Below, Earth cities sparkled with lights, and he could see the celebration fireworks still bursting in the sky over major capitals. Humanity was celebrating its entry into a galactic community. People spoke of a new age of peace and prosperity. Children went to sleep dreaming of visiting alien worlds and making friends with beings from the stars. But Han couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The Valeth were too perfect, too generous, too interested in human cities and human biology. His military instincts screamed warnings that his logical mind couldn't yet understand. He made a decision. Tomorrow, he would begin putting together a small team of people who shared his concerns. They would investigate the Valeth more carefully, quietly, without alerting either the aliens or the politicians who had fallen in love with their new galactic friends. Han didn't know what they would find, but he was certain of one thing. The Valeth had not traveled across the galaxy just to be humanity's friends. They wanted something, and Han intended to find out what that something was before it was too late. 6 months had passed since the Valeth arrived, and the world had changed in ways that amazed everyone. The alien cultural centers stood like gleaming towers in 12 major cities, their smooth walls seeming to glow with their own inner light. People lined up for hours just to visit them, to see the wonders of Valeth technology and culture. Lee Hyun-woo sat in his small office in Seoul, surrounded by computer screens showing data streams from around the world. As a data analyst for Korea's communication ministry, his job was to monitor internet traffic patterns and identify unusual activity. What he had been seeing lately kept him awake at night. The numbers didn't lie. Global internet traffic had increased by 30% since the Velith centers opened. But more strange than the increase was the pattern. Data flowed differently now, taking routes through servers that hadn't been used before, lingering in places where it should pass quickly. Hyunwoo pulled up a map showing global data flow. Before the Velith arrived, internet traffic moved in predictable patterns following the most efficient routes between major data centers. Now, much of that traffic seemed to make unnecessary stops at servers located near the 12 cultural centers. He made a note in his private files, a collection of observations he had been keeping since the 3rd month after first contact. His supervisor would think he was paranoid if he reported these concerns officially. Everyone was so happy about the Velith that questioning their presence seemed almost criminal. Across the city, Dr. Yoon Ji-hai was having similar thoughts. As a psychologist studying behavioral changes in urban populations, she had been asked to document how contact with alien culture was affecting human society. What she found troubled her deeply. People who lived near the Velith centers showed subtle but measurable changes in behavior. They were more cooperative, more willing to accept authority, and less likely to question decisions made by their leaders. The changes were so gradual that most people didn't notice them, but they were there in the data. Dr. Yoon had tested hundreds of volunteers over the past month. Those who visited the cultural centers regularly scored differently on psychological assessments compared to those who lived far from any center. The regular visitors showed decreased critical thinking skills and increased trust in authority figures. She tried to discuss her findings with colleagues, but they dismissed her concerns. People are happy, they said. Crime rates are down near the centers. There's less conflict, less stress. Isn't that a good thing? Dr. Yoon wasn't sure. Happiness was good, but not if it came at the cost of free thinking. Meanwhile, Commander Han had quietly assembled his investigation team. Officer Choi Min-ji from military intelligence had joined him, along with several other trusted individuals who shared his concerns about the Velith. They met in secret locations, using encrypted communication that couldn't be monitored through normal channels. Their discoveries painted a disturbing picture of gradual infiltration and control. The Velith aren't just sharing technology, Min-ji reported during one of their clandestine meetings. They're integrating themselves into our critical systems. Their medical devices are now standard equipment in hospitals worldwide. Their energy systems power major cities. If they wanted to shut down human civilization, they could do it with the flip of a switch. Han nodded grimly. What about government? Officials, any changes there? That's where it gets really concerning, Min-ji replied. World leaders who used to disagree on everything are now making remarkably similar decisions. They all support expanded Velith presence, increased integration of alien technology, and reduced military spending. The team had identified several politicians and business leaders whose behavior had changed significantly since they began working closely with the Velith. These individuals now promoted policies that gave the aliens greater access to human infrastructure and resources. Han's secure communication device chimed softly, a message from Hyunwoo, whom they had quietly recruited after discovering his data analysis work. Emergency meeting. Found something big. 2 hours later, they gathered in an abandoned warehouse outside Seoul. Hyunwoo had brought printouts and data drives containing his latest findings. I've been tracking global communication patterns, he began, spreading papers across a makeshift table. The Velith aren't just monitoring our internet traffic, they're actively modifying it. The others leaned forward to examine his evidence. Look at these patterns, Hyunwoo continued. News stories that question Velith intentions are subtly altered as they spread online. Words are changed, emphasis is shifted, and critical information is removed. Most people never see the original versions. Dr. Yoon studied the data. This explains some of what I've been observing. If people aren't getting complete information, their behavioral changes make more sense. There's more, Hyunwoo said. I found hidden data streams flowing between the cultural centers and the Velith ships. The amount of information being transmitted is massive. They're not just collecting data about our technology and culture. They're building detailed profiles of every human being on the planet. Han felt a cold dread settling in his stomach. Profiles for what purpose? I don't know, Hyunwoo admitted. But based on the data structure, it looks like they're categorizing humans into different groups. Some kind of classification system. Minji had been quiet during this exchange, studying something on her tablet. Now she looked up with concern. I think I know what those classifications might be for. I've been analyzing the psychological profiles of people who work closely with the Valeth. They all share certain characteristics. High intelligence, strong social connections, and positions of influence or authority. You think they're identifying key individuals? Han asked. More than that, Minji replied. I think they're identifying who to convert first. If you wanted to take control of a civilization, you'd start with the people who have the most influence over others. The team spent the rest of the evening analyzing their combined data. The picture that emerged was terrifying. The Valeth weren't the peaceful explorers they claimed to be. They were conducting a sophisticated psychological operation designed to gradually take control of human civilization without firing a single shot. Their technology wasn't just advanced, it was designed to make humans dependent on them. Their cultural centers weren't educational facilities. They were conditioning sites that gradually altered human behavior. Their gifts of medical and energy technology came with hidden monitoring and control systems. But perhaps most disturbing was how perfectly the operation was working. World governments were eagerly cooperating with every Valeth request. The media reported only positive stories about the aliens. Public opinion strongly supported increased integration with Valeth society. We need to warn people, Dr. Yoon said. The public has a right to know what's really happening. Warn them how? Minji asked. We can't use normal communication channels. The Valeth are monitoring and controlling them. And even if we could get the message out, who would believe us? Everyone loves the Valeth. We'd be dismissed as paranoid conspiracy theorists. Han had been thinking about this problem for weeks. We need proof. Something so clear and undeniable that even the most devoted Valeth supporter would have to accept. Choice, what kind of proof? Hyunwoo asked. We need to get inside one of their facilities. We need to see what they're really doing when they think no humans are watching. The others stared at him. Breaking into a Valeth cultural center would be extremely dangerous, possibly suicidal. The aliens had sophisticated security systems, and getting caught would mean more than just arrest. It would expose their entire investigation. But as they sat in that cold warehouse surrounded by evidence of humanity's gradual enslavement, they realized they might not have any other choice. I might have a way, Minji said slowly. There's a maintenance worker at the Seoul Center, Shin Dong-hyuk. He's been acting strange lately, like he's fighting against something in his own mind. I think the Valeth conditioning isn't working properly on him. Can we trust him? Han asked. I don't know. But he might be our only chance to get inside and see what's really happening in those centers. Han made the decision that would change everything. Contact him carefully. If he's really fighting their control, he might be willing to help us, and if we're wrong... He didn't finish the sentence. They all knew what would happen if they were wrong. The Valeth would discover their investigation, and humanity's last chance to resist would be gone. But as Han looked around at his small team of dedicated individuals, he felt something that had been missing for months. Hope. They were just a few people against an alien civilization, but they were humans, and humans had never been good at accepting defeat. The real battle for humanity's freedom was about to begin. Shin Dong-hyuk worked the night shift at the Seoul Cultural Center, mopping floors and emptying trash bins while the building slept. For the past 2 weeks, he had been fighting a war inside his own head, struggling against thoughts that didn't feel like his own. During the day, when he was around the Valeth staff, he felt calm and happy. He wanted to please them, to follow their suggestions, to agree with everything they said. But at night, alone with the cleaning equipment, the fog in his mind would clear and he would remember things that terrified him. He remembered the first month of working at the center, when the happiness had felt natural. He remembered the gradual changes in his thinking. The way his own opinions had slowly been replaced by ideas that seemed to come from somewhere else. Most disturbing of all, he remembered the other maintenance workers who had stopped coming to work. Not because they were fired, but because they had been promoted to other duties that no one would explain. When Officer Choi Min-ji approached him after his shift, Dong-hyuk thought he was finally losing his mind completely. She claimed to be part of a group investigating the Valith, and she said she needed his help to discover what was really happening inside the center. "I can't," he whispered, looking around nervously. "They'll know. They always know when someone is thinking the wrong thoughts." "How do they know?" Min-ji asked gently. Dong-hyuk touched his neck, where a small medical device had been attached 6 months ago. All center workers wore them, supposedly to monitor their health and protect them from any alien bacteria. These things, they don't just monitor health, they monitor everything. Thoughts, emotions, brain activity. When someone starts to resist the conditioning, they increase the signal strength. Min-ji felt her blood run cold. "Conditioning? The whole center is designed for it," Dong-hyuk said. "The lights, the sounds, even the air circulation system. Everything is calibrated to make humans more cooperative, more trusting. But some people resist better than others. I think my brain chemistry is different somehow. The conditioning works, on me but not completely." "Will you help us?" Min-ji asked. "Will you show us what's really happening in there?" Dong-hyuk was quiet for a long moment. "If I do this, they'll discover me eventually. The monitoring systems will detect my stress levels and brain patterns. They'll know I'm working against them." "We'll protect you," Min-ji promised. "No," Dong-hyuk said sadly. "You can't. They're too powerful and they're everywhere now. But maybe it's time someone fought back." 3 nights later, Dong-hyuk led a small team through the service tunnels beneath the Seoul Center. Commander Han Min-ji Hyun-woo and a new team member Kang Soo-jin followed him through the narrow passages. Soo-jin was a hacker who had developed ways to temporarily disable Valith monitoring systems. "The main control room is on the 15th floor, Dong-hyuk whispered as they climbed through maintenance shafts. "That's where they coordinate all the conditioning programs. But there's something else you need to see first, something in the basement levels that they don't think any humans know about." They descended deeper into the building, past levels that weren't on any public floor plans. The architecture changed as they went lower, becoming more alien, more disturbing. The walls seemed to pulse with a faint organic rhythm, and the air had a strange metallic taste. "Here," Dong-hyuk said, stopping at a heavy door marked with Valith symbols. "This is where they keep the specimens." Soo-jin attached a small device to the door's electronic lock. After several tense minutes, the lock disengaged with a soft click. What they found inside would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The room contained dozens of transparent containers filled with a clear liquid. Inside each container floated what had once been a human being, but they had been changed, modified in ways that were both fascinating and horrifying. The humans in the containers were still alive, but their brains had been connected to complex machinery. Cables ran from their skulls to processing units that hummed with alien technology. Their bodies showed signs of biological enhancement, improved muscle structure, modified organs, and neural implants throughout their nervous systems. "My God," Han whispered. "What are they doing to these people?" Dong-hyuk's voice was barely audible. "Creating the perfect servants. These were all volunteers from the first few months, people who were completely enthusiastic about Valith culture. They volunteered for what they thought was an advanced cultural exchange program." Min-ji studied the nearest container. The person inside looked peaceful, almost happy, but their humanity was gone. They had become something else, something that could serve Valith interests without question or hesitation. Hyun-woo was recording everything with a hidden camera. "How many people have volunteered for this program?" "Thousands," Dong-hyuk replied. "From all 12 centers around the world. They target specific individuals, scientists, military officers, political leaders, journalists. People with influence and authority. The horrible truth was becoming clear. The Valeth weren't just conditioning humans to be cooperative. They were creating an army of modified humans who would help them control the rest of humanity. Sujin had connected her portable computer to one of the alien processing units. "I'm downloading their files," she said. "There's massive amounts of data here about human psychology, biology, and social structures." "We need to get to the main control room," Han said. "We need to understand the full scope of their operation." They made their way back up through the building, using service elevators that Dong-hyuk's access codes could operate. The 15th floor was completely different from the public areas below. Here, the architecture was purely alien, with smooth curves and surfaces that seemed to respond to the presence of living beings. The control room was vast, filled with holographic displays showing data from around the world. They could see population maps, psychological profiles, and progress reports from all 12 cultural centers. Hyunwoo began photographing everything while Sujin tried to access the computer systems. What they found was worse than their darkest fears. The Valeth had detailed plans for the complete subjugation of humanity. They had identified key individuals in every country who would be converted first, followed by systematic conditioning of entire populations. The process was designed to take place over several years, gradually enough that most humans would never realize what was happening to them. But the most chilling discovery was in the historical files. The Valeth had done this before, many times. They had conquered dozens of intelligent species using identical methods. They would arrive peacefully, offer helpful technology, gradually integrate themselves into the target civilization's infrastructure, and then slowly convert the entire population into willing servants. "Look at this," Minji said, pointing to a display showing Earth's progress compared to previous conquests. "We're ahead of schedule. They expected more resistance from humans, but we've been more cooperative than most species." The reason became clear as they studied the psychological profiles. Humans had been chosen specifically because of their social nature and tendency to form hierarchical structures. The Valeth had identified humanity as particularly susceptible to their conditioning methods. "We need to warn everyone," Hyunwoo said. "The whole world needs to know about this." "How?" Sujin asked. "They control the communication networks. Any message we try to send will be intercepted and modified. There has to be a way," Han said. "Some communication channel they haven't compromised." Before anyone could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the building. Red lights flashed, and a calm Valeth voice announced that unauthorized personnel had been detected. "They know we're here," Dong-hyuk said. "The monitoring systems must have finally detected my resistance." Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridors, outside. The Valeth security forces were coming, and their team was trapped 15 floors above ground in a building designed by alien minds. "There's one more thing you need to know," Dong-hyuk said urgently. "The final phase of their plan begins in 6 months. They're going to activate something they call the Unity Protocol. It will broadcast a signal from all their centers simultaneously, completing the conditioning process for every human on the planet." "What happens then?" Minji asked. "Humanity becomes property of the Valeth Collective," Dong-hyuk replied. "Willing, happy, obedient property." The footsteps were getting closer. Han made a decision that surprised even himself. "Sujin, can you upload everything we've found to some kind of distributed network? Something they can't easily shut down?" "Maybe," she said, working frantically at her computer. "But it would take time, and I'm not sure anyone would believe it." "Do it," Han ordered. "Send it to every independent researcher, every conspiracy theorist, every person who might be suspicious enough to investigate further." "But sir, most people will think it's fake," Minji protested. Han smiled grimly as the security forces reached their floor. "Maybe. But humans have one advantage the Valeth didn't count on. We're paranoid, suspicious, and some of us love a good conspiracy theory. If even a few people believe this evidence and start investigating on their own, word will spread." The door to the control room burst open, and Valeth security forces poured in. But Sujin's upload was complete. The underground facility stretched for kilometers beneath the Canadian Rockies. a massive complex that had been built in secret over the past 2 decades. Dr. Nam Yoon-ji walked through corridors filled with the most advanced technology humanity had ever created, technology that would have seemed impossible just years ago. Commander Han stood beside her, still recovering from his rescue 3 weeks earlier. After his team's capture at the Soul Center, he had expected to be converted like the other prisoners. Instead, he had been rescued by a strike team that seemed to know exactly where to find him. "I still don't understand how this is possible," Han said, watching human technicians work on devices that looked almost as advanced as Valith technology. General Oh Sang-wook joined them in the observation chamber. The elderly general had aged 10 years in the past months, but his eyes still held the sharp intelligence that had made him Earth's supreme military commander. "We've been planning for this possibility since the 1990s, General Oh explained. "Not specifically for the Valith, of course. We didn't know who would come or when, but we knew that someday someone would come from the stars, and we knew they might not have humanity's best interests at heart." Dr. Nam gestured toward the massive construction bay where sleek spacecraft were being assembled. After the Roswell incident and other early contact events, a small group of military leaders and scientists began preparing for the possibility of alien contact. We called it Project Looking Glass. "You knew about other contact events?" Han asked. "We've had sporadic contact with various alien species for decades," General O confirmed. "Most were brief encounters, but we learned enough to understand that humanity was not alone in the galaxy, and that not all galactic civilizations were friendly." They walked toward the research laboratories where teams of scientists worked around the clock on reverse-engineered alien technology. Dr. Nam stopped at a workstation where Agent Lim Jae-seok was examining a Valith communication device. "Agent Lim has been undercover with the Valith for 8 months, Dr. Nam explained. He's been feeding them carefully crafted disinformation about human psychology and capabilities." Lim looked up from his work. "The Valith think humans are even more susceptible to conditioning than we actually are. They believe their standard conquest protocol is working perfectly, but they're only seeing the responses we want them to see." Han felt his worldview shifting. "You mean the government cooperation, the public enthusiasm for Valith technology?" "Mostly theater," General O confirmed. "We've been playing the role of eager, naive humans while secretly preparing for the real confrontation. About 60% of the positive response to the Valith has been genuine human excitement about alien contact. The other 40% has been carefully orchestrated to make them overconfident." Dr. Nam led them to a sealed laboratory where human volunteers were testing immunity treatments against Valith conditioning. "We discovered early on that their psychological manipulation techniques depend on specific brain chemistry patterns. We've developed treatments that provide immunity to their conditioning without affecting normal human brain function." "How many people know the truth?" Han asked. "About 50,000 worldwide," General O replied. "Military personnel, scientists, intelligence operatives, and key government officials. Everyone else is either genuinely enthusiastic about the Valith or genuinely conditioned by them. This way, even if the Valith scan human minds, they'll mostly find the responses they expect to see." They entered the main command center, where displays showed real-time intelligence from around the world. Unlike the public broadcasts that praised Valith generosity, these screens showed the true state of the resistance. "The evidence your team gathered from the Soul Center was crucial," Dr. Nam said. "It confirmed what we suspected about their conversion facilities and gave us detailed information about their timeline." Lim activated a holographic display showing the 12 cultural centers. "The Unity protocol they plan to activate in 6 months will indeed attempt to complete the conditioning process for all humans simultaneously, but we've been preparing a surprise for them." The display zoomed in to show the internal structure of each center. "Every center has been infiltrated by our agents. We've installed hidden devices that will interfere with their broadcast systems. When they try to activate the Unity protocol, they'll get feedback instead of compliance." General O smiled grimly. "The Valith have been so confident in their standard approach that they haven't adapted their tactics for human psychology. They don't understand that humans respond to deception differently than other species." "Different how?" Han asked. "Most intelligent species, When they discover they've been deceived, become demoralized and surrender, Dr. Nam explained. Humans get angry, and angry humans are extremely dangerous. She led them to another section of the facility where human engineers were putting finishing touches on weapons specifically designed to counter Valith technology. The weapons looked alien themselves, incorporating design principles learned from decades of studying extraterrestrial technology. We've had access to Valith equipment for months through our undercover agents, Dr. Nam continued. We've not only learned how their technology works, but we've found ways to improve upon it. Engineer Song Hayan looked up from a complex device that hummed with contained energy. The Valith assume their technology is so advanced that primitive humans couldn't possibly understand it, she said. They're wrong. Human engineers are very good at taking things apart and putting them back together in better ways. What about their space fleet? Han asked. Even with advanced weapons, we can't match 12 massive ships. General O's smile broadened. Who says we only have ground-based weapons? He led them to the largest chamber in the facility, where the ceiling opened to reveal the night sky. Rising from hidden launch bays were spacecraft that rivaled Valith vessels in size and sophistication. We've been building our own fleet, General O explained. Using technology we've accumulated over decades combined with innovations inspired by studying Valith systems, they think humanity is limited to the small ships we've shown them in our public space program. Captain Ro Minho emerged from one of the spacecraft, removing his helmet as he walked toward them. We've been conducting secret test flights for months, he reported. The Valith sensors can't detect our ships when they're in stealth mode. We've been studying their fleet from close range, mapping their weaknesses and defense systems. The scope of humanity's preparation was staggering. While the world celebrated alien friendship, thousands of humans had been working in secret to prepare for the possibility that the Valith were not what they seemed. How did you know? Han asked. How did you know to prepare for this specific type of threat? We didn't know the specifics, General O admitted, but we understood something fundamental about galactic politics. Any species that could cross interstellar space had to be thousands of years more advanced than humanity. If they came here, they either wanted something we had, or they saw us as a threat to be eliminated. Dr. Nam pulled up historical files showing previous alien contacts. Every encounter we've documented has followed one of two patterns: brief scientific observation followed by departure, or attempted infiltration and control. The Valith's approach matched the infiltration pattern from the beginning. But why? Didn't you stop them immediately? Han asked. Because we needed to understand their full plan, Agent Lim replied. If we had acted too early, they might have changed tactics or called for reinforcements. We needed them to commit fully to their current approach before revealing our hand. Commander An Ji-woon entered the command center, carrying reports from resistance cells around the world. All units report ready, she announced. We have teams in position at every cultural center, agents aboard every Valith ship, and counter-conditioning treatments distributed to key personnel worldwide. General O nodded. The Valith plan to activate their Unity protocol in 3 months. They moved up their timeline after the Sol incident, believing they need to accelerate the process before more humans become suspicious. What they don't realize, Dr. Nam added, is that their accelerated timeline actually helps us. We're ready now. We've been ready for weeks. The longer we wait, the more humans they might genuinely convert. Han looked around at the massive facility, at the advanced technology and the determined faces of the people who had been preparing for this moment for decades. So what happens next? General O walked to the main display, which showed Earth, surrounded by the 12 Valith ships. Next, we spring our trap. The Valith think they're about to complete the conquest of humanity. Instead, they're about to discover that they've made the biggest mistake in their species' history. They underestimated us, Captain Rowe said simply. More than that, General O replied. They assumed we would react like every other species they've conquered. They didn't understand that humans have been preparing for hostile alien contact since we first looked up at the stars and wondered if we were alone. Dr. Nam activated a countdown timer on the main screen. 72 hours until the Unity protocol activation, 72 hours until the Valith discovered that humanity was never as helpless as we appeared. The Valeth flagship hung in Earth's orbit like a silver jewel, its perfect surface reflecting the blue and white of the planet below. Inside the command chamber, Ambassador Thalvin stood before a massive holographic display showing the 12 cultural centers around the world. Unity protocol activation in 30 minutes, announced the ship's intelligence system. All conditioning centers report optimal readiness. Estimated success rate, 97%. Thalvan smiled. After centuries of conquest, this operation had been almost disappointingly easy. Humans had proven even more susceptible to conditioning than their psychological profiles had suggested. Within hours, Earth would join the Valeth Collective as a willing servant world. On Earth's surface, in cities around the globe, millions of humans gathered near the cultural centers for what they believed would be a celebration of human Valeth, unity. The conditioning had worked so well that many humans were genuinely excited about becoming part of the galactic community. But not all of them. In hidden bunkers and secret facilities, 50,000 humans waited for the signal that would change everything. Commander Han stood in the main control room of the Canadian facility, watching countdown timers on a dozen screens. "All teams report ready," announced Commander An Ji-woon from the communication station. "Resistance cells are in position at every cultural center." Captain Ro Min-ho's voice came through the speakers from his stealth ship, hidden behind Earth's moon. "Space Forces ready. Valeth fleet has no idea we're here." Dr. Nam Yoonji monitored the biological status of their forces. Counter-conditioning treatments are active in all resistance personnel. Even if the Unity protocol partially succeeds, our people will remain unaffected. General O watched the main display showing the Valeth ships. "Remember, the goal is not just to defeat them, but to send a message to the galaxy. Humanity will not be an easy target for any species that considers conquest." 20 minutes before Unity protocol activation, the Valeth began their final preparations. Energy built in the cultural centers as the conditioning broadcasts prepared to reach full power. The aliens expected to see peaceful compliance as billions of humans simultaneously accepted their new role as servants. Instead, they got war. The first sign of trouble came from the Tokyo Center. Agent Kim Soo-young, who had been posing as a maintenance supervisor for months, activated explosive devices throughout the building's conditioning systems. Similar explosions rocked all 12 centers simultaneously as human agents revealed themselves and began their attacks. "What is happening?" Thalvin demanded as alarms sounded throughout his ship. "The cultural centers are under attack." "Impossible," replied his second-in-command. "Humans do not have the technology to penetrate our defenses." That assumption proved fatally wrong, as human resistance fighters stormed the centers using weapons that matched Valeth technology and sophistication. The aliens found themselves facing enemies they had thought were primitive and helpless. Engineer Song Hae-in led the assault on the Seoul Center, carrying devices that disrupted Valeth energy shields and communications. "These worked better than we hoped," she reported to the command center. "Their technology is advanced, but it's not adapted for human tactics." The Valeth had spent centuries perfecting their conquest method, but they had never faced an enemy that had been secretly preparing for their arrival. Human forces moved with precision through the cultural centers, targeting specific systems, with weapons designed to exploit Valeth technological weaknesses. In space, Captain Ro received the signal he had been waiting for. "Attack pattern Alpha," he commanded his hidden fleet. "Show them what humans can do when we're properly motivated." 12 human warships decloaked around the Valeth fleet, their weapons already charged and targeting systems locked. The alien ships, designed for intimidation rather than actual combat, found themselves facing enemies they hadn't known existed. "Impossible," Thalvin whispered, as his sensors showed human ships that matched his own vessels in firepower. "How can they have developed such technology so quickly?" The answer came from Agent Lim Jae-seok, who revealed himself aboard the Valeth flagship. "We didn't develop it quickly," he said, stunning the alien command crew with a weapon designed to disable their nervous systems. "We've been developing it for decades. The battle that followed lasted only 6 hours, but it completely reversed the balance of power in Earth's solar system. Human forces, fighting with the desperation of a species facing extinction and the anger of a people who had been deceived, proved more than capable of matching their alien opponents. The Valith had based their entire strategy on the assumption that humans would react like every other species they had conquered. They expected fear, confusion, and eventual surrender. Instead, they found organized resistance, advanced technology, and a level of tactical sophistication that caught them completely off guard. Surrender, General O broadcast to the Valith fleet as human ships surrounded the alien vessels. Your conquest has failed. Talavan stared at the tactical display in disbelief. Half his fleet was disabled, the cultural centers were in human hands, and the Unity Protocol had not only failed, but had somehow been reversed to broadcast human resistance messages worldwide. This is not possible, he said. Our analysis showed that humans were psychologically incapable of this level of deception and preparation. Agent Lim, now revealing his true identity, smiled. Your analysis was based on the assumption that we were primitive and naive. You never considered that we might be primitive, but cunning. The final phase of the human counterattack began as resistance cells worldwide revealed the truth about the Valith to populations that had been partially conditioned. The evidence that Han's team had gathered from the Soul Center, combined with live broadcasts from the battles at other facilities, created a wave of anger and resistance that swept across the planet. Humans who had been genuinely enthusiastic about alien contact felt betrayed and furious. Those who had been partially conditioned found their mental fog clearing as the broadcasting systems were destroyed. Even the converted humans in the Valith laboratories began showing signs of recovering their original personalities. Why? Talvan asked as human forces boarded his ship. Why did you pretend to be conquered? Why allow us to proceed so far with our plan? Commander Han, now aboard the flagship with the boarding party, answered the question that had been troubling the alien. Commander, because we needed you to commit fully to your standard approach. If we had resisted immediately, you might have adapted your tactics or called for reinforcements. More importantly, added Dr. Nam, who was examining the ship's technology with obvious interest, we needed to understand exactly how your conquest method works so we can defend against other species who might try the same approach. The scope of humanity's deception became clear as the Valith realized how thoroughly they had been manipulated. The eager cooperation of Earth's governments had been partially genuine, but mostly theater. The psychological profiles showing human susceptibility to conditioning had been carefully crafted lies. Even the apparent success of their conversion programs had been exaggerated by human agents feeding them false data. We studied your psychology just as carefully as you studied ours, General O explained as he toured the captured flagship. We learned that the Valith Collective has conquered 47 other species using identical methods. You never adapted your approach because it always worked. Until now, Captain Rowe added with satisfaction. The aftermath of the failed conquest sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. Within days, subspace communications networks carried news of the Valith defeat to dozens of star systems. The message was clear. Humanity was not the easy target that galactic civilizations had expected. Thalvan, now imprisoned aboard his own ship, made one final attempt to understand how his perfect conquest had failed so completely. What will you do now? He asked his human captors. Learn, Dr. Nam replied simply. We'll study your technology, your history, and your methods. We'll use that knowledge to help other species defend themselves against conquest attempts. And we'll make sure the galaxy knows that Earth is not available for conquest, General O added. Any species that wants to visit us peacefully will be welcome. Those who come with hostile intentions will discover that humans are much more dangerous than we appear. Commander Han stood at the viewport of the captured ship, looking down at Earth. The planet showed signs of the recent battle, but it was still free, still human, still home to a species that had just announced its presence on the galactic stage in the most dramatic way possible. Send a message to all Valith territories, he ordered. Tell them their conquest fleet has been defeated, their agents have been captured, and their standard conquest protocol has been permanently compromised. What should we tell them about humanity? Asked the communications officer. Han thought for a moment, then smiled. Tell them that humans are not victims, servants, or experiment subjects. We are humanity, and we were waiting. The message that went out to the galaxy that day became legendary among spacefaring civilizations. It told the story of a young species that had fooled an ancient empire, turned the tables on experienced,